Welcome to another hour of CBS Sports HQ. Jeremy St. Louis, happy to have you along. We're set to talk football, and as you saw already, big news today with Baker Mayfield finding a new home in Carolina. We're going to discuss potential new homes for some of the top remaining free agents, starting with a newly crowned Super Bowl champion and a former Mayfield teammate. We're, of course, talking about Odell Beckham Jr. Beckham was released by the Browns in the middle of last season. Then he signed with the Rams. He was a force during their Super Bowl run, catching 21 passes for 288 yards and 2 touchdowns before tearing an ACL in that 23-20 victory against Cincinnati in the showcase game. He finished the season with 44 receptions for 537 yards and 5 touchdowns overall, and his first Super Bowl ring, of course, with the Rams. Odell headlines a list of the top remaining free agents. A few wide receivers on this list: Julio Jones, T.Y. Hilton, Cole Beasley, Blake Jarwin at tight end, and some defensive players like JPP and Dontta Hightower. All right, so let's talk about some best fits for these players. And to do that, we welcome in CBS Sports NFL writer Tyler Sullivan. Sully, the Rams and Beckham have broken up, but, I mean, they're still in love. Odell crashed Sean McVay's wedding back in June. The team has said if there was no salary cap, they'd have signed him ages ago. But if they can't get a deal done and he's out, where else would he be a good fit?
Yeah, I'm right with you, Jeremy. I think that the Rams are still in this. I still think that there's love in the air. It could, spring eternal when training camp runs around. You never know. And I don't think it's going to be Carolina. I think that now that Baker Mayfield's there, I think that relationship has kind of squawked any possibility, if there was ever one, for OBJ landing in Carolina. But for me, I'm looking at the Green Bay Packers. For me, that's a team that Odell Beckham should have on his radar, and that's a player that the Packers should have on their radar. They were a team that was in the Odell Beckham sweepstakes last year when he was released from the Cleveland Browns, and he was making that decision: do I go to Los Angeles? Do I join Bill Belichick in New England? Or do I join the eventual back-to-back MVP in Aaron Rodgers? Ultimately deciding to go to LA, proved to be right. He won a Super Bowl. But now, over the stretch of that time, you've seen the Green Bay Packers get worse at the wide receiver position. Obviously, trading away Devonta Adams in that blockbuster with the Las Vegas Raiders. They did bring in Sammy Watkins. They drafted players. They do have Allen Lazard and some of those go-to guys for Aaron Rodgers, but they're still lacking that legit high-level, high-talent option that, when healthy, Odell Beckham brings to the table. If he is that player that we saw in the postseason with that immediate rapport with Matthew Stafford, with Aaron Rodgers, that's something that should be very intriguing to the Green Bay Packers. And because they don't have that legit number one option right now, I do think that they'd be more comfortable than other teams saying, hey, listen, we can wait. We feel like we're going to be competitive later on in the season, that you can recover from your torn ACL from the Super Bowl. We only really need you to that second half of the year, almost treat you like as a trade deadline acquisition. So for me, I feel like that's a perfect spot for them to be saying, hey, listen, he's talented enough that we can wait, and he could be a factor come the postseason.
It could be a great fit, as you mentioned, with Aaron Rodgers there in Green Bay. All right, another big-name wide receiver who we haven't really heard much about is former Falcons great Julio Jones. There was a story about Tom Brady trying to get him to come to Tampa, but, I mean, nothing there yet. So when you look at Julio's situation, where would he be a best fit for 2022?
Yeah, I don't think we should overthink this one too much. It reminds me a little bit of when the Chicago Bears released Nick Foles, and we're like, okay, well, where are we going to put Nick Foles? Well, how about with the coach that was his offensive coordinator when he was winning the Super Bowl for the Philadelphia Eagles with Frank Wright and the Indianapolis Colts? We're looking at the same place. We're looking at the Indianapolis Colts because there is that familiarity with the quarterback in Matt Ryan, now under center in Indianapolis after that trade with the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, these two know each other better than arguably any quarterback wide receiver duo that's in the NFL right now. This reunion just makes a total amount of sense for me. Again, Julio Jones wouldn't be the clear-cut number one wide receiver. It'd be number two behind Michael Pittman. There's a bunch of options there, obviously. Paris Campbell, Alec Pierce is a rookie second-round pick that they brought in. But he could be in the mix to still be a factor in the red zone, be a legit option with a rapport already built in with Matt Ryan. And it's an offense that you don't really have to be the main focal point. It's not really going to be in the passing game, I don't think, too much, because you have a guy like Jonathan Taylor in that backfield. They're still going to run the football a great deal, even though Matt Ryan is a better passer than what they had last year in Carson Wentz. To me, I'm not overthinking it too much. You have Julio Jones. Yes, it was a down year last year in Tennessee, but we're also looking at a wide receiver that's not too far off from having nearly 1,400 yards in 2019, and that was with Matt Ryan as his quarterback. I don't think he'll be like that anytime soon in 2022, but could he be a 800, 900-yard receiver with double-digit touchdowns because he's just such a force in the red zone? With Matt Ryan reunion, I think that could be possible.
And to your point, familiarity breeds success. He played 10 games, 434 yards and a touchdown with the Titans last season, but certainly would be nice to see him pair up with Matt Ryan and the Colts. All right, let's go defensive side of the ball and talk about Jason Pierre-Paul. After 4 seasons with the Bucs, he's on the open market. He did visit the Ravens a month ago. How do you like that fit?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, and this is a team that I'm identifying as a good landing spot for them. Obviously, you said there was a visit earlier this offseason. Maybe, this could be something where it happens a little bit closer to training camp, and he's a factor with the Ravens. It makes a lot of sense. I think everybody's kind of sleeping a little bit on Baltimore because of all of those injuries that they suffered last year. Obviously, the contract stuff with Lamar Jackson is kind of capturing any sort of Baltimore Raven type of headline, but don't sleep on them being competitive in the AFC this year. Again, you're getting all of those players that were injured last year back healthy. You've added to your secondary. Now what you need to do is add to that pass rush. They're dealing with a couple of guys here with Achilles injuries, so they might not be a factor in 2022. And Jason Pierre-Paul, he's not going to be a guy that headlines your pass rushing attack, but could he be a rotational player that can legitimately be a factor in certain situations for John Harbaugh? Absolutely. So for me, again, he is someone who I think is a 2-time Super Bowl champion, knows how to win. He's going to a situation where the Ravens, I would expect to be competitive in the AFC North and in the AFC in general. And so when you're talking about a team that still needs a little bit of help at that outside linebacker pass rusher spot, there's really not a better way to look than JPP right now. I mean, we're looking at a guy that had 9.5 sacks and was a Pro Bowler in 2020. Down year in 2021, but again, could easily bounce back with a change of scenery.
And that AFC North going to be very competitive. Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh. All right, what about a guy like linebacker Dontta Hightower? I mean, when you look at the landscape, is the return to the Patriots the best fit for him at this point?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's easy to say, all right, let's try to piece him into a new defense, and let's see this guy that we've watched in New England for his entire career. Let's see what he can do elsewhere. But I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. You look at what he's been able to do over the course of his career, was a legit mainstay fixture in 3 Super Bowl wins for the New England Patriots. He's made a ton of money with the New England Patriots, and he's a guy who did opt out during the COVID year in 2020. I do wonder if those years of trying to cash in free agency, those days are probably behind him. So when you look at it from a financial standpoint, I don't think a team is going to empty the bag to try to get Dontta Hightower. And then when you look at a career motivation, he's not a player that is still searching for that Super Bowl win. He's got 3 Super Bowl rings and Lombardi trophies in his resume. So for me, I don't see it making a lot of sense to go elsewhere to either ring chase or chase a bag. I don't think that's really going to be out there. For me, makes a lot more sense for him to return to the Patriots if he wants to continue his career. And the Patriots, I believe The Athletic had a report about this saying that they would welcome him back with open arms. So it feels like it's New England or retirement for Dontta Hightower.
All right, this next one, when I saw your pick for Blake Jarwin, I was like, of course, his best fit. It's a no-brainer. Tyler, what is it?
It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, look at what has happened to the Bucs this offseason. They lose Rob Gronkowski to retirement. O.J. Howard signs with the Buffalo Bills. It's really only Cameron Brate at this point that's headlining the position. And, I feel like it wasn't too long ago when I'm listening to Fantasy Football Today and we have the boys talking about Blake Jarwin as a legitimate tight end 1 with Dallas. And he is someone who you're drafting later on in those fantasy drafts because he's going to have a breakout year. Ultimately, never truly happened. Injuries got in the way. Dalton Schultz ascended in Dallas as the legit tight end 1 for them. But I still think that there's plenty of upside here. He's only 27 years old. And if he lands with a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a quarterback like Tom Brady who loves throwing to his tight ends. I mean, just look at over the course of his career. Rob Gronkowski's a Hall of Famer, obviously because of talent, but he also had the greatest quarterback of all time throwing him the football. If Blake Jarwin can find himself in Tampa Bay, there is a realistic world where he's not only the starter for them, but he's probably one of the most targeted players on that pass catching unit. So for me, again, if you can link yourself up with Tom Brady, you do it 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, it's something certainly to keep an eye on with Jarwin there. If he does end up signing with the Bucs, that would be something. All right, wide receiver T.Y. Hilton, least productive campaign of his career in 2021, 331 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns, his lowest touchdown total of his career. So what system do you see him really fitting into best at this point in his career?
Right. And so when you're looking at T.Y. Hilton, it's got to have a multitude of factors here. It's kind of similar to the opposite of what I talked about with Dontta Hightower. He's still someone that would like to contend for a Super Bowl, still maybe wants to get that last payday for a one-year deal or something along those lines. It's got to be the right fit from a financial, team, quarterback standpoint. And for me, that's the Baltimore Ravens. They're a team that obviously, we talk about like the Packers not having maybe enough at the wide receiver position. You can make the same case for Baltimore. There's really not much going on there right now, especially when you start to realize that they traded Marquise Hollywood Brown at the NFL draft to the Arizona Cardinals. They are still looking for that guy that could stretch the field, be that explosive player. Now, obviously, T.Y. Hilton's a little bit more long in the tooth in the NFL than a guy like Hollywood Brown, but he still, when healthy, can stretch the field, still be that explosive piece in an offense that can stretch the field. And so if you're T.Y. Hilton, it makes sense. You're going to a team in the Ravens, who I said earlier, I think is getting slept on a little bit in the NFC as a legitimate contender. He'd be linking up with an MVP quarterback in Lamar Jackson, who's motivated to throw the football, to put up numbers because he's still searching for that contract. And from a financial standpoint, again, that would make a lot of sense for them as well too. They should have some capital there to go spend on a guy like T.Y. Hilton. So if it's not going to be the Colts, I think the Baltimore Ravens are a team to watch here for T.Y. Hilton.
So the Ravens appearing twice on this list, 2 key players that they could sign, still available in free agency. All right, Cole Beasley, coming off 3 straight seasons of 100-plus targets with the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, his quarterback. It's tough to improve on that in terms of his quarterback play, but where would he be a good fit?
Yeah, I mean, when you're going from Josh Allen to anywhere else other than maybe like Kansas City or Justin Herbert, I mean, you're really downgrading here. So obviously that's going to be a factor here. But for him, I think one area or one team that makes a lot of sense is the Chicago Bears. It's another team that I talk about where the cupboard is really bare at the wide receiver position. You're talking about Darnell Mooney, Byron Pringle. I mean, that's really, all that's making up your top tier options there. So, if you're looking for someone who can be a reliable guy out of the slot, I think you can do a lot worse than Cole Beasley. You look at Justin Fields last year, he was completing less than 60% of his passes. And for his career, Beasley has been around a 70+% catch rate for his career. So again, he's someone who is sure catched short field out of the slot, someone who could be that security blanket for Justin Fields, and an offense that doesn't really have a lot of options in that passing game. This is a team that I've been looking at and betting on that they could be the lowest scoring offense in the NFL just because of those lack of weapons at the receiver position. If you're looking at David Montgomery as your legit option and you're going to be a run-first team, I don't think you're going to put up a lot of points. All of a sudden, you add a guy like Beasley. It's not like adding Devonta Adams or anything, but he is someone who is a sure catch guy that can help you move the chains. It would help the offense quite a bit. 2
straight seasons, 82-yard receptions over 2020 and 2021. All right, lastly, let's talk about the lone running back on our top available list. Devonta Booker entering his 7th season in the league. Last year, he had his most productive season since his rookie year. He's looking at his 3rd team in as many seasons. So where does he end up going?
Yeah, one team that I think would behoove themselves to find a guy like Devonta Booker is the Cincinnati Bengals. You look at what they were able to do last year, magical season, arguably the greatest season in their franchise's history, being able to make it to the Super Bowl. And one of the reasons why they had so much success offensively was because of that running game in the backfield with Joe Mixon. And while he was phenomenal, career year all the way across, one thing that you have to notice is that he had a career high in touches and a career high in offensive snaps. And that's only with the regular season. We're not even talking about all the miles that he put on in those games en route to a Super Bowl appearance. So for me, he's 25 years old, in the prime of his career. He can certainly handle that abuse and put up impressive numbers, Joe Mixon. But do the Bengals really want him to put a lot of tread on those tires in the middle of the regular season when they have hopes of going further again into the postseason and again competing for another Super Bowl? So for me, if you add a guy like Devonta Booker, who has been promising in spot starts, obviously played well with the New York Giants last year when he was able to start. I think he averaged around 4 yards a carry in the games he actually started. You could really help Joe Mixon stay fresh from wire to wire. So for me, Booker makes a lot of sense for opportunity because you can be a legitimate RB2 in that offense. And also it would help the Bengals and Joe Mixon overall keep that guy fresh.
Right on the money, Tyler. 4.1 yards per attempt last season. CBS NFL writer Tyler Sullivan discussing best fits for some of the best remaining free agents out there as we inch closer to the 2022 season. The NFL returns to CBS on September 11th. You can, of course, stream the games as well over on Paramount+.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.